Welcome to the Starboard podcast, where we're talking everything in the world of windsurfing. Through this series, we're going to meet the dream team riders for Starboard and talk about everything from boards, pro series, competitions and events, coaching, tips and technique, and basically everything cool that's happening on the water right now, all around the world.
So welcome here to the Starboard podcast, where today we're talking about sustainability, environmentally friendly kind of stuff. And it's one of these terms that gets battered around quite a lot, but do we really know what it's about? Do we really know what we as windsurfers and as water sports people can do? And I suppose I should start with a little bit of honesty, and I hope this relates to a lot of you guys. I love getting new kit. I love it when the boxes arrive, you get some new sails, some new boards, whatever it all is. And probably the last thing in my mind at that point is, how did this get here? How carbon neutral is the board? How was it made? How was it designed? And really, how good am I being to the environment? I'm just super excited to get some new kit, which is where Starboard and a lot of the water sports brands now are stepping in and sort of doing that little bit for us behind the scenes. And to explain a lot more about that, because a lot of this stuff is new to me as well. This is a really interesting subject I'm quite interested to dive into. So I've brought an expert from Starboard. This is Lizzy Howard. Lizzy, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. I can hear you.
Perfect. So can you, first of all, just introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself and what do you do within Starboard?
So I'm Lizzy. I head up our environmental projects team at Starboard HQ. So based over in Bangkok at the moment. You can see some of the retro posters in the background. So I run everything for sustainability wise, from carbon footprinting all the way through to supporting local communities, stuff we do in the office, stuff we try and talk about on channels like this, everything from education to action, hopefully. I've been a windsurfer for quite a long time. I actually was in Vassiliki, where Cookie is now, doing my flying fish course, something like 10 years ago, maybe. But I've been at Starboard for 4 years, working in the environmental team. And yeah, looking forward to telling everyone a bit about what we're up to behind the scenes.
Nice. Great little intro. And there's a like an initiative or like a tagline that Starboard have thrown out quite recently, I think really holds quite well. Is Starboard's goal is not only to be the best in the world, but the best for the world. And I think that kind of summarizes the job, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah, in a nutshell, that is our mission. That's since before I got here, so it's not super recent, but yeah, definitely some words to try and live by, for sure.
And everyone talks about carbon dioxide, carbon neutral, carbon footprint. What does that really mean? What are we doing when we're talking about carbon dioxide and pushing it into the world?
Yeah, so it is a complicated topic. I won't go too in depth, but to give you a little bit of oversight, carbon dioxide is just one of lots of different greenhouse gases. Other ones you might have heard of are methane is another one that comes up quite a lot. And the idea is that these gases, when we release them into the atmosphere, create like a protected layer around the earth. And what that does is it stops the UV rays that come from the sun. They come in, they bounce off the earth, and they can't get back out again. And that is slowly warming up the planet. And that's where the concept of global warming comes from. Now, carbon dioxide is just one of those gases, but I mean, sometimes it's easier to refer to one. But the way that, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. When we talk about carbon footprinting, what that means is that we are calculating the amount of emissions that come from maybe the production of a board. Now, everything has a carbon footprint. I have a carbon footprint from my life. I have a carbon footprint from the last week. When we talk about a product and the carbon footprint of a product, we are specifically talking about its life cycle. So from the materials being extracted from the ground, or if they were come from wood, like the removal of that, the harvesting of that, all the way through to manufacturing it, delivering it, and then right at the end is what happens to it at the end of its life. There are often emissions associated with what happens at the end of its life, whether it is put into landfill, whether it is incinerated, whether it is recycled. There are going to be emissions associated with that. So when we talk about the carbon footprint of a product, we're talking about throughout the whole life cycle of that product, what happens, what processes are emitting carbon dioxide or equivalents like methane into the atmosphere that's contributing to things like global warming. I think that's... kind of a short summary.
No, that's good. That's really good. And that means from the when you're talking about the whole lifestyle, the whole lifespan, sorry, it means that being carbon neutral is massive. Like that's not an easy thing to do, just to say, well, the board weighs this much, we've only used this much carbon, that's nothing at all. You know, you're talking planes, boats, you're talking the distribution is massive, of course. The packaging that goes into it. I know a long time ago, Starboard moved away from plastic packaging to paper and cardboard packaging. Obviously, that was a huge one. What else is dropping in to try and neutralize the carbon footprint?
So when you look at the carbon footprint, we're not actually just looking at our products. We are looking at our company as well. So most companies you might have seen are offsetting their carbon footprint, and that's separated into 3 scopes. So the first scope is for a business is any emissions that are coming directly from your activities in your office or in your building or associated things that you're paying for. So for us, the biggest one that's our scope 1 emissions are company cars. So they're cars that are owned by the company, and they, whenever you drive them, they emit greenhouse gases, as with most cars. We have one electric vehicle. We're making our way, but we're not quite fully electric yet. So that's your scope 1. For us, it's very small. If we were manufacturing our own boards in-house in our office, and we had like a big furnace, or we had something that's going to release emissions directly, so we're literally burning things, then it will be a lot higher. We then look at our scope 2 emissions. So our scope 2 emissions are our electricity use. So we are looking at any electricity for heating, for cooling that we use in our office spaces and around and in people's home offices. That would be considered like our scope 2 emissions. Now, most companies only look at scope 1 and scope 2 because that's all of the emissions that you are responsible for. Now, the third one is scope 3, and that is the biggest amount of emissions realistically. So that includes for us the manufacture of all of our products. It includes the commutes of all of our employees, business travel. So if we fly to a conference, or if there is a meeting, a distributor meeting, or if there is an event that people go to, that is included within our scope 3. So you can see that third category is really building up. Not everybody offsets those emissions. But we think it's quite important. We wouldn't be a business if we didn't make boards. So in essence, we are very responsible for the emissions that they create. And so that's why we consider them that scope 3 is such an important part of what our understanding our emissions as a whole, because the carbon footprint is just the first step. So carbon footprint is understanding what your emissions are, and it then kind of leads you on to the next stages, which is how can I reduce that? And then the next step, which is, okay, if I can't reduce all of it to 0, what can I do in the meantime to offset that, so that even if I'm still emitting some carbon dioxide, I'm doing something somewhere that's going to bring it down elsewhere.
Now, I was reading before we met, of course. I wanted to read up a little bit on the subject, and I read a fact that especially discussing this just now, seemed mental. And that was that Starboard remove 10 times more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than they produce and release into it. And that's through all of that stage 1, 2, 3 that you were just mentioning. How is that possible, considering what you just said? There's a huge amount of carbon dioxide being released. How are you now producing 10 times more of that?
Yeah, so it is a big number. All of our carbon footprint reports are online, and normally our emissions are somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 tonnes a year. It's quite a big number, but when you take into account something like the America's Cup, one event will be like 30 million tonnes, something crazy. So the numbers are huge. Our little 5,000-ish tonnes isn't so bad. But what we do is we actually plant mangroves. We plant enough mangroves to pull down 50,000 tonnes. Yeah, 50,000 tonnes. That's the number I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Good bit of times tables from me. We do that through planting mangroves. So mangroves are a type of tree. They grow in tropical regions. So if you're from maybe further north or further south, you might not have come across them. But being based here in Bangkok, we see a lot of them around the coastline of Thailand and around this region. The reason that we plant mangroves is because they are very good at sequestering carbon. And to sequester carbon just simply means to absorb, use it to grow, put it in the soil underneath them. So Yes, that's what we do. We plant mangroves to help us offset our emissions 10 times over. The reason being is that, well, this is Sven's reasoning, and I very much agree with it, is that if we are just drawing down exactly the amount we're producing, we're not doing anything to help the planet get into a better place. And let's face it, I'm sure everyone's probably heard and can feel the heat waves and see on the news the storms, the wildfires, the flooding. We've got a long way. We've got to go beyond just improving, but we've got to do what we can to actually reverse some of the damage as well. And we're also taking the assumption that not every company is offsetting their emissions. So by going a little bit beyond ours, we can hopefully sort of do a little bit extra to kind of mitigate our impact.
Yeah. And it's interesting, actually, like without making it a competition, but Starboard are one of the leaders in this industry, aren't they, with offsetting and planting mangroves and pushing that stuff forwards. Is that spearheaded by Sven and yourself? Like, I know Sven's a massive advocate. Sven, for anyone that's new to the channel, by the way, he's the director, the CEO, the founder of Starboard. He is Mr. Starboard. And he's fully behind all of this, isn't it? This was him a number of years ago that then obviously brought you and a whole team in to start this.
Yeah, absolutely. He's very much at some point, I think we started planting mangroves in 2019. In 2018, we launched some of our other environmental projects, but since about 2017, we've been calculating our footprint. So we've been doing this for a good 7 years now. And there was definitely thoughts about it before then. Sven's been very much pushing that we need to not just be the best in the industry, but we need to try and get everyone else to up their game. It's not always easy trying to explain something that's quite a complicated topic. But I think we try and simplify it easily. So for every board we plant 3 mangroves, for every board that we sell. You might have seen older messaging that said 1 mangrove. And the reason that changes is not because we have decided we're going to plant more or we didn't want to plant as many back then. It's simply that the science has changed. The way that people are calculating the amount of carbon a tree can sequester and can draw down has changed. And as the science improves and changes, we have to change the amount of trees we're going to plant to offset. So we now plant 3 mangroves per tree. So anyone who's got a Starboard board, I have one, can look at that and know that there are 3 trees planted in the ground somewhere in Myanmar to help offset that 10 times over.
That's huge. I mean, that even backs up some of these other numbers that I pulled out just here, is that so far Starboard have planted 3 million trees, which is already a huge number. But then in the next 10 years, the plan is 10 billion trees, or 10 billion mangroves being planted by Starboard. So
it's not just from Starboard. This is with Worldview International Foundation. So Worldview International Foundation are our planting partner. They operate within a lot of, they operate globally, trying to support in getting more mangroves in the ground and supporting community development as well. So it's not just about we're going to put some trees in the ground. It's about making sure that those trees are in the best condition to live for a really long time, and that you're supporting the community so that they see the value in protecting those trees. So it's understanding that, yes, it's important to plant trees, but if you don't have that community support that gives value to those trees being grown, then if the community around that forest doesn't have the income to survive, then the chances of them chopping down those trees for firewood, for farming, for whatever it may be, increases. So you've got to make sure that that community surrounding and the villages surrounding those mangrove forests are supported by the mangroves being alive. So whether that is through initiatives like what Worldview are doing, supporting them in starting their own businesses, providing them with a lot of the kids with scholarships to universities, supporting with providing teachers, so many different aspects that come from the guys that are doing the planting to support the neighbouring communities, giving them jobs, giving them education, helping them to kind of see the value and actually receive some of the value from that planting.
I think that's the key thing for it, isn't it? Is if they realise that it's more important to have the mangroves there and they can make more money and more business from that, from the locals looking after it, than chopping it down and selling it for wood or whatever else they might be using it for, then there's the benefit to the locals to keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mangroves are like this super tree, right? So like me out here in Greece, if I started planting some trees, it wouldn't have the same effect as it does in mangroves. And it's same, obviously we're both from the UK, but around the world, if people it's obviously good to plant some trees and do some stuff that we can, but there's something insane about the mangroves compared to every other tree. That's why that's been chosen, isn't it?
Yes. So, for anyone that doesn't know about mangroves, if you've never visited a mangrove forest, if you go to mangrove forests, they grow on the coastal regions. They grow on coasts, on estuaries. They're one of very few plants that can survive in like salty water. So, a combination of salty and fresh water. So they're very hardy. But what makes them so impressive is that they can draw down and absorb 5 times more than your sort of average terrestrial tree. And the reason that they're so important in this way is that what they do is that so all plants drawing carbon dioxide, this is a very simple explanation, drawing carbon dioxide, and that helps them grow. So if you have charcoal, for example, that is carbon, and that is normally made from wood that has been underground for a very long time. So that's what your charcoal is. The wood itself is carbon. It's made of carbon. So trees draw in this carbon dioxide in order to help them to grow. They draw in more when they're small, and then as they get bigger, they're only drawing in carbon dioxide to replace leaves, to grow new branches, to kind of get a little bit bigger. Now, normally, when a tree loses a leaf or loses a branch, that is broken down, it rots on the ground, and it's broken down by microorganisms, and they release that carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. So your tree, as long as it is alive, stores lots of that carbon, but as soon as a bit of it dies, it releases it back into the atmosphere. Now, because mangroves grow on top of this, on salty water, they have these huge root complexes that look kind of like this. When a branch falls off of the tree in a mangrove forest, it goes into the salt water and it is trapped underneath the water, which means there's no microorganisms to break it down. So what happens is you get this layer upon layer upon layer of of leaves, of branches, of foliage, of bits of bark, old trees that layer up, and they never get broken down. So that carbon dioxide never gets released back into the atmosphere. So not only are they storing it in their trunk and in their leaves, but when those bits of plant dies, it slowly compresses and compresses into the soil, and it stores it. So you end up with this incredibly high carbon content soil. If you've ever been to a mangrove forest, or if you ever get the opportunity, I recommend it. It has a really thick, like mud. Yeah. And that's because it's really dense in carbon dioxide, and it's very low oxygen levels, which means that it's so difficult for these branches to break down. And what you see is that suddenly you're not just storing carbon dioxide in the living tree, but also in anything that dies as well. So that is what makes mangroves so different to so many other trees. And it's what kind of makes them such a sort of superhero in terms of dealing against climate change. I'm sure there'll be some scientists out there that will tell me that that's not quite accurate. But I think for my understanding, at least, I think that gives kind of a good summary of what's happening and why it's so different from maybe the forests that we have on land.
No, I like it. It's clear. It's good. And actually, while we're discussing this just now, some of you guys at home, we're listening to this on Spotify, and you can't see the sort of dangly fingers that just popped up when you're describing the roots going down. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously you can see what's going on. But for wherever you're finding us, Spotify or through my Ride Along channel on YouTube, what I'm going to make sure I do is I put a few links down below this video so you can follow through to a few other little videos coming from Lizzy and the team at Starboard explaining a little bit more about this. And you can see the size of these mangroves. They are just enormous, aren't they? And you can see all the little sproutlings that are coming through, all the trees that are being planted, along with a few other little links I'm going to pop down to the bottom of that. But there's something else you're working on. I mean, there's loads of things you work. Sorry, you're going to say?
No. I was just going to say I would really recommend going and looking up some pictures and some videos of mangroves because they are amazing. And I'm a bit biased, but they are amazing.
It's on your doorstep. You get to see them every day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously you've got loads of different things going on with Starboard and with looking after the environment. And the other one I want to ask about is the plastic offsets program. Yeah,
so we launched our plastic offset program in 2018. What our plastic offset program is I'm sure any of you that are windsurfers or any sort of water sports, when you get out on the water, it's one of the saddest things to see is plastic on the beaches. Single-use plastic on the beaches, floating around. If you're unlucky enough, you've crashed into one in a foil, you've got one caught on your fin, you've come in from a session with plastic bags tucked in your harness. I know the feeling. But yeah, what we try to do is it's being here in in Thailand and Asia, you see the problem even more than you might do in other countries. In the Gulf of Thailand, we don't have huge currents, so there's lots of this waste washing up on the beaches. And in 2018, the team here decided that they wanted to do something about it. So from there, we thought, okay, how can we support local communities and get our beaches a little bit cleaner? So we set up the plastic offset program to essentially employ people that wanted to come and help pick up plastic. There are lots of volunteer programs, but this was an opportunity for us to spend a little bit of our money and employ people to clean the beaches. So we started in Thailand, near where we do all of our testing here. We had a team there, but since then we've grown and grown. We've now got 4 chapters, 2 in Thailand and 2 in Myanmar. And we do a little bit more than just paying to collect plastic. So the teams, they go out, they collect plastic, they sort the plastic. What they can recycle, they take to a recycler, and what they can't recycle, they take to an appropriate disposal site. So in Thailand, none of it goes to landfill. It all goes to either recycling or waste to energy. In Myanmar, the situation is very different. They don't have access to many recycling facilities, and there is no waste to energy. So a lot of it go to landfill, but it goes to a government-treated landfill. So it's a step better than being on the beach. Now, it's not just about... Huh?
What is a government-treated landfill? What's different to a normal landfill?
Yeah, so what it means, it's just a differentiation between a landfill being somewhere that people just dump piles of waste, and a landfill that is bordered, so no one can access it. It has a layer on the bottom that prevents anything leaking through into the soil, and then it's periodically covered to prevent either the wind blowing things away, or from the rain washing things away, or from fires and things like that. So it's a managed landfill. It's not perfect. If we do what we could to avoid it, but for anyone that doesn't know the situation in Myanmar at the moment, there is essentially a civil war happening. So what we're doing with our program is we're just trying to make sure that communities are still receiving a form of income. We've seen the plastic offset program pivot a few times. We've always initially said it's about picking up plastic, it's about cleaning beaches, but we've seen multiple times where it's become much more about being able to provide communities with income and support that they need. So initially, it was during COVID. A lot of hospitality staff and workers on the beaches in Thailand lost all of their income. There's no tourism. Most people were out of a job. And we, as a outdoor sports industry, we were doing all right. So it was an opportunity for us to hire more people, to pay people more income, and to give them kind of a lifeline in a difficult situation. Now we're doing something similar in Myanmar. So since the coup in 2021, it's one of the few employment opportunities for some of the communities that we're working in. It gives them an income, a reliable income. It gets them out and allows them to kind of do something for their local community. And in addition, in Myanmar, we're also running environmental education programs, because it's not just about cleaning the beaches, it's about empowering the next generation to look after them and to understand there's no point us cleaning beaches for more plastic to end up on the beach. So we provide the kids with environmental education, and at the end of each session, they all bring in their like reusable bags and buckets, and they come home and they take with them a load of rice as well. So it's a way of providing income, food, some security to a group of people that really at the moment do not have a lot. So very proud to be able to kind of be able to support that, and very proud of the fact that Starboard has continued that program even in difficult times, I think.
No, it's huge, isn't it? It is huge. And I think you nailed it quite right. It's the longevity, isn't it? You know, what we're doing right now probably won't affect you and I that much, but in the generations and the years to come, that's where it's really going to start hitting home of, well, what did they do back in the 2020s to sort things out for the 2070s, the 2100s in the future? You know, that's where it's all looking towards, isn't it?
Yeah, I think everyone has something that they can do in regards to plastic, whether it is saying not using it, saying no to single-use plastics, using your bottles and things like that, whether it is doing a beach clean in your own home, or talking with the organization that you work with and saying, look, can we make sure that we've got good recycling things going on here? Can we remove plastic from our packaging? Can we do one little thing to stop us using plastic, or work together to kind of try and clean the environment around us? But I think a lot of it as well is just about being able to share information, because for a lot of people, plastic is convenient, and there's often a lack of understanding of the problem in itself. And especially if you aren't someone that's always, you don't see the problem all the time. Maybe you've got a government that do a really good job of cleaning your beaches, or you have a really good city council that makes sure your streets stay clean. You don't always see the problem as it is. And so to kind of all educate ourselves and one another about what the problem is and the steps we can do to make a difference. I think, it's not just down to individuals, it's down to companies as well, but all companies are run by individuals. So that's something we can all do.
Right. You're quite right there. Like, a lot of the stuff, we don't necessarily see the problem. I was back in Brighton a couple of years ago, and I remember seeing that there was some sort of a strike going on, and the local government services weren't doing the usual waste pickups that they were doing. And it took 2 days, and the bin piles and the plastic piles, like all around the streets, are just insane how quickly it piled up. And I really don't think we realized quite how much of a consumer nation we are until they stopped taking it away and hiding it away from us. It was eye-opening, I think, for the whole of Brighton, just in the 24 hours I was there for.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You mentioned a number of good things that we as the individual, as the consumers, can do just there. Have you got any top tips that you could say for us that we can take away from this, going, well, Starboard are doing their thing, what can we do as the individual?
Yeah, I think it will vary from person to person what they are able to or willing to sort of sacrifice, or what steps that they are able to take. But I think the easy ones, and I think I remember from being back in the UK, that this is something that lots of people are already starting to do, is having like a reusable coffee cup, or having a water bottle, a reusable water bottle, especially in countries where the tap water is good, or whether you can get refills somewhere quite easily. Is just making sure that you kind of keep those to hand and take responsibility for your own plastic use. That's what I would say on an individual sense. In regards to plastic anyway, is just taking responsibility. And that can even go as far as, if you are booking a hotel or somewhere, checking, like, do they have any environmental credentials at all? And sometimes just contacting them, giving them an email. Hey, just wanted to know, can you not put any plastic water bottles in my room? Something that happens all the time here. And sometimes they won't listen, but invariably sometimes you'll reach someone and they'll go, people don't want plastic water bottles in their rooms. Okay, maybe we do something different. And I know I don't get lots of emails, but occasionally from people that have Starboard boards, I get an email and they say, I noticed that this comes with a bit of plastic on it. Is this recycled plastic? Could we make this recycled plastic? And I'm like, that's a great shout. Maybe I didn't think of that. Let me just check with our product team. Is that recycled plastic? Is that something we could change? And sometimes a short email that comes through is something that changes the way that the business operates. And it can be something really small, but it can also be a trigger if you think, God, I want to see more products that come with repair kits, or I want to see more products that are carryover styles from the year before, so that they don't look, so that there's more of them in the market. Like, I want to be able to know where I can take my board to be recycled. I want to know more about the ingredients in my board, what they're made of. Like, all of these kinds of requests are things that, every time it's not going to make all the difference every time, and it's not always going to be someone that sees it and responds. But on the off chance that there is somebody, we've all got that power to just ask if there's something that we would like to see improved. And I think everyone's got a little bit more power than maybe they think. I've definitely seen comments end up in the office somewhere of someone saying, maybe we should make this better. I think that put pressure on people to improve. I think we all need it sometimes.
Oh, I like that. Good tips. Lizzy, I want to put you on the spot a little bit just now, because you mentioned a couple of things just there, and I really want to know a little bit about it. But yesterday I had a good chat with Federico Mauricio about his life and about his windsurfing, and I know you've been working a bit with him about a new something that's going into boards. Now, I know you use a lot of recycled wood, or locally sourced and environmentally friendly wood, bio resin, but there's something else. Now, can you just give us a little bit of info, sow the seed if you like, and then I get you guys back onto the channel later on in the summer to tell us some more about what you're developing with Federico?
Oh, I mean, you're going to have to give me a hint on which of the projects with Federico you mean, because I don't want to go off on a complete tangent.
Okay, he was talking about the core of the board, very briefly.
Ah, I am probably not the right person for you to talk to about this one. This is probably one for our product team. So we actually have, so our environmental team is kind of split. So I head up a lot of our carbon footprinting, but Ollie is is our materials R&D guy. So he works more closely with the R&D team on product materials. And I could go into it, but I feel like I'm probably going to say something wrong.
Okay, so I'm gonna get Ollie and Federico to talk about that. But you just dropped in then. What are you working on? What's the secret project that you've been going on with Freddie? You can give us a little insight too.
So we've been working on a few things over the last little while. So one of them is talking about understanding his personal carbon and plastic footprint and how we can calculate that, how we can reduce it, looking at what we can do to offset it. So over the last year, he's been keeping track of his travel. He's been keeping track of his electricity use. He's been keeping track of fuel use, all sorts of things that he's been doing so that we can try and understand how, as a professional athlete, he can measure his impact and hopefully reduce it. Or in a lot of cases, he's traveling between competitions, he's traveling between training events. His travel is a necessary part of his job. So looking at that. He is also working with a university on product development. He's looking at developing a more sustainable waveboard. So he obviously is really passionate about protecting the environment, and his focus is on how can he make the equipment that he uses even better. I know that he's looking at a variety of core materials and layup materials. I'm at the other end of this, so I see it more from the materials that he's working on. When we get a sample in the office of something, we see him work out what other products that we can put things into if they don't work. So if we test a material, a windsurf waveboard is one of the highest impact products that we put on in terms of it goes through a lot. When you are not environmental impact, in terms of on the water, it is being smashed against waves over and over again.
Yeah.
It's going really fast. It's generally quite high impact. It means that it has to be super strong and super durable. So if there's any issue with your material, it's just not going to be good enough, because realistically, the best board is the one that lasts the longest. That's the best board for the planet, is the one that lasts the longest. That's what it's all about, making sure they stay in the market for as long as possible, that you can keep using it for 10 years and then you can give it to your friend and they can use it for the next 10 years, because it is a piece of plastic. And while single-use plastic is really bad because it only gets used once, the plastic that is better for the environment is the one that gets used 100 times. So that's what means that when sort of Federico comes against materials and they don't work, they're not quite strong enough for a waveboard, we go, okay, they might not be strong enough for a waveboard, but are there any other applications in the entire product portfolio where that could be used for? So we're not just saying in a different board, but potentially we could look at sup paddles, or maybe we could look at fins, or look at bits of sails, bits of accessories. Like, where else could that material be used where it's replacing a more impactful material? Where can we use it that is going to be a better use for that material? So I probably see it at the other end. I don't see too much of the development that Federico is working on. But when there are materials that come through that maybe don't work, we work a lot in the office with trying to figure out where else we could use that.
It's a tough game, isn't it? Because the better you get at your job, the less good the business is going to do, because you're not selling new boards, because people are going to keep using their old boards because you've made them so well. Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Stuck in the middle.
Well, that is it.
Yeah.
And I can't even explain the number of fights I get in. No, I think realistically, the best way to look at it is, you can think of it like that, is if we make our boards so good that no one buys another one, go, oh, well, you're never going to sell any more boards. There's 8 billion people on the planet, and I can tell you most of them are not windsurfers. So realistically, if we want to do better as a business, we don't have to keep selling windsurfers the same boards over and over again. We need to grow the sport. And I think that that's a great motivation that's a great way to drive a business forward, is not just thinking how can we keep selling to people that already have boards, but thinking how can we get more people interested in this sport? How can we make it so there are more people that want the board? And because that's kind of, for us, and even in the environmental team, yes, there's people that will say to me, like, surely you can't be wanting more boards to be made. Surely that can't be good for the environment. But on the other side, every extra person that you get out on the water is another person who's likely to be an ambassador for the planet. Like, having that connection with nature, being out on the water, Like spending time in the elements is proven to be the best indicator for whether someone is going to be an advocate for the environment. You see it in all outdoor sports brands. Yeah, loads of athletes, they're all driving towards protecting the environment because realistically, we all want to go windsurfing, we all want to go surfing, we all want to go snowboarding, we all want to go mountain biking, whatever it may be. If we cannot get outside anymore because the water is too polluted, because there's no snow left on the mountains, because there's building developments that have ruined all of our local surf breaks, if we don't have that, if we don't have our environment, we don't have that sport anymore. So the more people we can get on the water, enjoying nature, being involved in sport, the more people we get supporting the environment that are likely to email their council and say, please don't build that there. Please let's try and keep our beaches clean. Can we have more recycling bins? Like the more people that care about their own local environment and the environment globally, the more people are kind of going to be helping to make a difference. So yes, on the one side, is producing more going to be the answer? Maybe not, but is producing more water sports enthusiasts going to be the answer? Yeah, probably.
That's the way. That's really well summed up there. How can we produce these ambassadors? How can we get people into the sport? Which is actually a seamless link and a really nice little summary just there. At some point in the next near future, I'm not entirely sure when, I'm going to be chatting to Fiona Wilde, who's a massive ambassador for getting kids into the sport. And there's other big names that are going to pop in, or sorry, rephrase that. There's a number of other big names in the industry that are all about starting from the ground roots, getting kids, getting juniors, getting the next generation of water sports people into the industry on the water and out and about and doing more stuff. So this all links really, really nicely together. Lizzy, thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry, you were going to say?
No, I said I couldn't agree more. We've been speaking a lot with Fiona and with Emma Wilson from IQ Foil GB about how they're getting next generation into water sports and environmental stewardship is a big part of that. And I think that I couldn't agree more that the more kids that we get involved and we aspire to be a part of this, and that's definitely the best thing that we can do for the sport and for the planet, I think.
Love it. Lizzy, thank you so much for your time joining us here today. Remember, if you're on Spotify listening to this or whether you're on YouTube, it's available on both channels. And all of the links and everything we just mentioned at the end there is going to be put into the description on the YouTube channel. And if I can work it out on the Spotify, I'll do exactly that too. There's loads of little videos that have popped up that Lizzy and the team have been working on recently. It explains even more details. And we were talking about how incredible the mangroves are and the other stunning images you've got from that as well. So Lizzy, thank you again, not just for joining us here today, but all the work that you and your team are doing with Starboard. And I look forward to getting you and Federico and some other guys back on to talk a little bit more about these developments within the industry and the products you've been working on, or the hand-me-down plastics that are rolling around in different Starboard products.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for chatting. And if anyone wants to reach out, they can reach out to eco@starboard.com and that will come through to me and the team. We welcome any questions. Please don't be too mean to us. But feel free to ask us any questions and we'll do our best to give you a good answer.
Love that. And I'll make sure that email goes in the description as well. Lizzy, thank you very much. And I look forward to speaking to you or someone else, whether it's YouTube or Spotify, elsewhere on the Starboard podcast soon. Thank you.
Fabulous.